Hello there, welcome to Stepping Up. I'm Sarah Sander. Our focus on this edition of the program is Nigeria's new foreign policy and issues relating to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Now, at independence in 1960, Nigeria espoused a non-aligned foreign policy in which it favored neither East nor West. This posture notwithstanding, Nigeria vigorously pursued an Afrocentric policy in which African concerns were a topmost priority. Over the years, the Africa as Centerpiece policy has been questioned by Nigerians who have argued that the interest of Nigerians ought to be the main focus of foreign policy. However, it would appear that the new policy direction under President Muhammadu Buhari, who assumed office over a year ago as a democratically elected president, has taken some new directions, largely in line with his party's campaign manifesto, which promised the electorate that Nigeria's national interest will guide the foreign policy direction. The question then is, exactly what foreign policy direction is Nigeria pursuing? Stepping up to the platform to provide answers to this and many more is Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Jideofor Kusike Onyama. We'll get to know more about him after this time out. Please stay with us. Geoffrey Jideofor Kusike Onyama was born on the 2nd of February 1956 to the family of a Nigerian jurist, Charles Onyema, who was Nigeria's first ever judge in the International Court of Justice at The Hague. In 1997, Geoffrey Onyema bagged a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from Columbia University, New York, United States of America, and Bachelor of Arts degree in Law from St. John's College, Cambridge, United Kingdom in 1980. Onyema further obtained Masters of Law from the London School of Economics and Political Science in 1982 and Masters of Arts in Law from St. John's College, Cambridge in 1984. He was called to the English Bar of the Gray's Inn in 1981 and got admitted as a Barrister of Law of the Supreme Court of Nigeria in 1983. He began his early working career as a research officer at the Law Reform Commission, Lagos, from the year 1983 to 1984. He later got employed as a lawyer and an associate in Nigeria from 1984 to 1985. He joined the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, as an assistant program officer for Development Cooperation and External Relations, Bureau for Africa and Western Asia. Onyema rose through the ranks at WIPO to become Deputy Director General for Development Sector in 2009. In November 2015, he was appointed Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs by President Muhammadu Buhari. He is married with 3 children. Thanks for staying with us. We're reaching you from the office of the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Jideofor Kusike Onyama. Thanks for having us in your office.
Thank you very much, and thanks for pronouncing my name so well.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to start off by asking exactly what foreign policy direction is Nigeria going?
Good question. It's multi-targeted, our foreign policy. We have in the sub-region, in ECOWAS, our foreign policy directive there is, number one, good neighborliness and restructuring of ECOWAS to be much more responsive to the economic needs of the people of the West African region. So there is a process ongoing at the moment to restructure ECOWAS for that purpose. And Nigeria is very engaged in that process. As far as the continent is concerned, Africa, we are putting particular emphasis on peace and security and stability on the continent. And so there is a rapid deployment force, an African force that is being set up. And again, we're being very proactive and very engaged in that. And globally, we are pushing very much a foreign direct investment, attraction of foreign direct investment and export promotion, and by reaching out to a number of countries and emphasizing economic diplomacy. And then on the multilateral level, that's the UN, we're also trying to engage much more with that institution and the various UN organizations.
Okay, we've heard you talk about citizen diplomacy at public engagements. Exactly how are you driving this, if you are?
Well, this is a good point, because actually when I referred to it, is to try to really put in context what foreign policy really is all about. Citizens diplomacy is something that is credited to a former foreign minister, the late Ojo Maduekwe. And as I understand it, it's putting the Nigerian citizen first, giving greater priority to the Nigerian citizen outside the country. That was the idea of it. But my position is that that is something that the ministry does and should do as a matter of course.
Okay, now still on citizen diplomacy, let's talk about the recent developments, the killing of 2 Nigerians in South Africa and the arrest, detention and subsequent release of Nigerian students in Turkey. What's the update on these?
On the South African one, we're reaching out to the South African authorities to determine the precise circumstances and then to act, to ensure, most importantly, that the perpetrators are brought to justice, and of course that we find out exactly what led to that. With regards to Turkey, we feel that that was the most unfortunate and unacceptable set of developments. And we have communicated our displeasure to the Turkish authorities at all the levels, the highest level and all the levels. And I think they have understood the displeasure and the strength of the displeasure of the Nigerian government, and we're happy to report that some have been released, and of course there are accusations that have been made, allegations with respect to a few others, but we're really trying to get to the bottom of that. I must say it has not been easy, and we have not been happy about the way things have proceeded.
Okay, now Mr. President has been very busy on diplomatic shuttles. I know you've been part of all that. Can you speak to the gains?
The gains have been really twofold. One, keeping engaged with all the countries and maintaining the goodwill of those countries and those leaders. But I think also showing that to them that he is still committed to all those objectives that endeared them to him from the very beginning. When he came into office, there's really an outpouring of support and goodwill from all those countries, and it's important not to just let that fritter that away, but to remain engaged, and above all to show them directly and at first hand that he is still committed to all those objectives that they have all bought into. And I think this is extremely important because especially in the area of the economy, they really wanted to hear from him at first hand that he was still determined and committed to take all the necessary steps, and some of them very strong steps, to open up Nigeria for business. You know, transparency in particular, and removing, you know, all the bottlenecks that were disincentives to foreign investors. So I think the gains there are that those countries are coming back and encouraging their businesses to come back and invest in Nigeria.
Okay, and the fight against insurgency?
There again also, I think that those are also the gains from those visits. The reinforcement of the support from all those countries in terms of hardware and sharing of intelligence, and of course also the humanitarian crisis that we are facing. So his visits have kept those on the agenda for all, because you see, you know, all these heads of states and all these countries, they have 1,000,001 other priorities actually, you know. So so his visits also have the added effect of keeping them engaged with Nigeria.
And it was a glorious moment for us as a nation, wasn't it, with the recent release of 21 of the abducted Chibok girls?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, that was very good news, very heartening news. And I think, again, it makes a point, I think, very well, because there was some foreign engagement in that process. And I think that those partners were able to stay the course because they have that confidence in the government, you know. Okay,
now let's talk about the recent rating of Nigeria as Africa's biggest economy. How can we leverage on this?
It sounds good, and I think that the way we can best leverage on it is as a selling point to, you know, in engagement with other countries economically, in particular, that come and invest. This is the largest economy, you know, on the continent, and it is worth your while. And also, you know, politically, I think that, you know, we can also leverage on that, because as, you know, you're wanting your voice heard in various international fora, you know, the fact that you're coming from the position of, you could almost call it strength, as the largest economy, would also play a role in getting you either elected into certain positions like the Security Council and those kinds of things.
Okay. Now, the German government has a migration rescue stroke empowerment plan which seeks to create jobs in developing countries to discourage migration to Europe. Is Nigeria involved in this, or has Nigeria keyed into this?
They've discussed it, you know, with Nigeria. So we have to now look at the concrete plans, how it's actually supposed to work out. In principle, of course, it also keys into the vision of Mr. President, which is to get the economy of the country to such a level that Nigerians will no longer feel the need to embark on these hazardous trips across the desert and the Mediterranean. So anything that would, you know, develop the skills of Nigerians and provide jobs for Nigerians is music to our ears.
At this point, I would like to take a short break. Viewer, don't go away. The program continues in a moment. Thanks for staying with us. The program is Stepping Up. We're reaching you from the office of the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Jideofor Onyama. Honorable Minister, Nigerians still do not have ambassadors at post. Their counterparts are reporting here. When are they expected at post, even though I know the process is on? And what is the criteria for appointing non-career ambassadors?
Actually, all ambassadors are the prerogative of Mr. President. So he appoints people that he believes will best represent him and the country. And that's the only criterion, actually. So when? Now, to a large extent, we've done what we've needed to do, which is to nominate all the ambassadors. So they've all been nominated. Half of them have gone through, the career ones have gone through already Senate screening. And the non-career ones are going to go through that process. Then, of course, once the countries have been identified in which, to which each ambassador will be credited, you then have to wait for what they call the agrément from each country. And so the question when will depend on when particular countries have given their agreement to that particular individual. So it will vary from country to country.
Does not having ambassadors at posts not impact on our foreign relations?
Clearly, it does. If not, then you wouldn't need ambassadors if it didn't impact. It does. I mean, it's ideally you want to have an ambassador because the weight of that position always makes a difference. So if you have a chargé d'affaires who is acting, yes, they will cover the interest of the country, but in terms of the clout, it will not quite be the same. So yes, to a certain extent, more in the level of importance that the country, the host country, will really attach to the position, a chargé d'affaires, as opposed to an ambassador.
Okay. How does the ministry relate with retired career ambassadors?
Very good question. Well, there are two organizations actually that the retired ambassadors have set up. Ideally, there should be one, but there are two. And so there's an institutional mechanism for engagement through those associations. And, and of course, we need to tap into the experience and the skill set, of retired ambassadors. It would not be in the interest of the country if it just went to waste. So I'm personally exploring ways to, to set up mechanisms for permanent engagement so that we can really benefit and they can help to invigorate our whole foreign policy elaboration, development.
Okay. Now, your profile shows you spent a good part of your public service life outside the country as an international civil servant. Now you're back home serving your country. How do you compare the two?
It's true I spent 30 years out of the country, but in the organization in which I worked, most of those 30 years were spent in the external relations and development sector. And about half of that time was the development and external relations sector for Africa. So Africa was my portfolio and Nigeria was part of my portfolio. So I was engaging directly in the end actually, because even when I rose to be Deputy Director General, it was also for development cooperation and development. So almost all the time I've been there, I've been working with Nigeria, and in particular with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Ministry of Trade, with the Ministry of Justice, and with the Ministry of Science and Technology, and also sometimes with the universities. because you know, I was working in the field of intellectual property, which cuts across actually everything, culture, you know, the copyright and so forth, and the legal aspects of things, and foreign affairs. So to that extent, it's been actually quite easy for me, because a lot of the people in the ministries of foreign affairs, of trade, were people I was working with before, and organizing training programs for them, and also assisting in institution building with them, with putting in place policy and legislative you know, structures, and also, you know, infrastructure. So so in a sense, I'm familiar with the territory.
You speak 4 languages: French, German, English, Igbo. In fact, you were speaking French to me earlier. Are you looking to take a shot at a UN job when this is over?
You know, again, good question. I spent 30 years outside, and I had actually taken early retirement and had moved back to Nigeria before I was appointed. A lot of people believe I was brought from outside, but I had actually come back and had resettled in Nigeria, and I've come home for good. So somebody spoke to me about this possibility, and I told them, as far as going out is concerned, that's
behind you.
A lot of my schooling was done outside. A lot of my career has been outside, and I've always wanted to come back home, settle, and live out the rest of my life here.
Okay. It's speculated that you're a medical doctor. I've looked at your profile. It is not reflected. Can you speak to that? Just talk about, are you a medical doctor?
I'm hearing that for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm absolutely hearing, wow, medical. I was hopeless in sciences, so there's no way on earth I would have ventured in that direction. My eldest brother, unless maybe there's a mistake, he's a medical doctor and then psychiatrist. But that's the nearest.
So maybe that's the confusion then.
Possibly.
And just before I let you go, the US election is closing in. How do you assess the slant the campaigns are going? It's become more personal rather than issue-based.
And I think that's a very good point again, because you know, very often you would think that a country as sophisticated as the United States, steeped in such tradition, and with such brilliant human resources. I mean, if you look at Nobel Prizes, you know, I think the United States is way ahead of any other country. So you would expect that the level of discourse for such an important position would be extremely high, and it's completely mind-boggling, you know, the low level of discourse. So that's something that I find absolutely amazing, that such a powerful, sophisticated country could, in selecting its leadership, allow the discourse to be at such a low level. But maybe to a certain extent, what that shows is that a lot of these countries are driven not so much by the individuals at the top, but that, you know, it has an internal motto that just drives irrespective of who is at the head of the government.
Your recent visit to London, was it an inquisition? Because it seemed like it was an inquisition.
Inquisition? No, on the contrary. It was actually to go and lend support, show solidarity, and you know, as I was in the neighborhood, to go and to meet the staff, find out, you know, what the challenges were, assure them that headquarters is you know, is there to provide all the support, and to give some direction, you know, of what government is thinking, where we want to take the country, reminding them that they are very much part of of that process, reminding them of their responsibilities, and encouraging them. Yes.
And what is the greatest challenge regarding our embassies from your findings?
Governance. I think governance, administration. I think that our missions have to, well, there are two things. Have to first of all understand that they are service providers. They're providing service to the public, and have to gear themselves to be service providers and not a bureaucracy, civil service, and just have that mentality of service provision, efficiency, courtesy, and so forth. And then the second thing is good management of resources.
I'll leave it there. At this point, I would like to thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for having us in your office.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thanks.
And thank you too, viewer, for staying tuned. Don't forget to send your questions and comments, SMS only please, to the numbers on your screens and the various platforms. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.